Hey guys, what's going on? It's the NRL Fantasy Fanatic coming out of round number 6 from round number 5. We're going to be taking a slightly different tone with this video. As you know, I've kind of rekindled my love for NRL Fantasy, making videos again on the weekly to kind of give out my opinion about the trades, what you should be doing, what you should be looking for. But this video is going to be focusing on something a little bit different, specifically the NRL Fantasy drama within the community. Specifically with Adrian Buttery, who is a long-time fantasy coach. He has been in the fantasy groups for as long as I know. In fact, I made a video on him 5 years ago called NRL Fantasy Drama back in 2017, surrounding some drama that was associated with Butters. And we find ourselves 5 years later in our current predicament where this became quite the headline. In fact, the number one page on Facebook for NRL Fantasy is NRL Fantasy Talk. The top two popular posts this week were one from Adrian Buttery about his situation, and two, a response from an admin about Adrian Buttery. Both received more reactions in terms of likes and responses within the hour than you'd see any other post in that group within a week or within a month. It was crazy. I think it was over 100 likes within an hour. It was crazy likes or reactions, funny faces, whatever you want to say, angry faces, sad faces. That is absolutely insane. It's crazy to think that in the world of, talking footy with the boys, doing stats, talking about your teams, trades, is that drama is first and foremost the number one topic of this week. And I wanted to give my 2 cents going way back. I've got some context as I just, illustrated. I made a video 5 years ago, and I'll kind of give you the full timeline, my thoughts. I may even remove this video. I'm going to be honest. These videos that I'm making this year, very different to the ones I used to make. I don't do any post-editing. I don't remove things out. I don't add things in. I don't add filters. I don't add intro music, background music. I don't do any of that. My position in the NRL fantasy world in terms of social media channels is purely out of enjoyment. And if I can, put up the odd video or two and it helps X, Y, Z, whether it's just because of nostalgia or because someone actually takes my advice on board, that's brilliant. For me, I'm just really enjoying it more than anything. But we'll take you back many, many moons ago. I started making videos on this very channel. This channel is purely my creation, just to myself. I did many things with this channel over the years, from live streams of video games to personal journeys, doing Pokemon videos in person, and all that good stuff. And I've thoroughly just enjoyed it. I would have kept making NRL fantasy content, except I became an employee for one of the NRL clubs. Part and parcel of becoming associated with a club means you can no longer participate in raffles or draws or competitions that can have prizes associated with the NRL. And obviously NRL Fantasy, there's cash prizes, there's weekly prizes. You used to be able to win a car. I think it was a Holden back in the day. I think it became 20 grand. I don't know what it is today. Absolutely no idea. Can't tell you. But I'm no longer, I was no longer employed by an NRL club, which meant I could go back to making vids. So I became completely null and void of fantasy. I left all the NRL fantasy groups. There were certain groups on WhatsApp where we used to discuss, last minute trades, ins and outs. I left all those prior to my engagement with my NRL role, and people are probably out there like, what do you mean? Why would that happen? If only the first and second place gets a prize and there's over 100,000 contestants, why would anyone need to leave? And I think it's just on principle. There is a prize at the end of the day. Would I have taken any advantage in my employment? Absolutely not. But you can't argue that. It's just part of what you do. In fact, I think most people most old schools used to play would remember there were a number of players who played fantasy and Supercoach. Daly Cherry Evans was probably the biggest player, the biggest name that we knew used to do that publicly. He obviously doesn't anymore. Whether players come under the same ruling as administration staff, I don't know. Maybe there are other players that do it on the cuff or on the low, or just do it out of enjoyment. So at the time, I was advised I just couldn't make content anymore, and I couldn't be part of the NRL anymore, which is completely fair. So I completely went to the dark side. I had no idea, and this is my first year back. I think I joined last year and fiddled a bit, but this is my first year back as NRL Fantasy Analysis. Back then, doing NRL Fantasy Analysis. Now there is someone called NRL Fantasy Analysis, which I should say, back in the day, it was just enjoying to provide content. There weren't a lot of podcasts. I don't know any other YouTubers at the time that were creating NRL Fantasy videos. Now there's heaps. The amount of resources out there is one guy out there that absolutely kills it on YouTube, NRL Fantasy Analysis, Jamie Brown. He is he is well and above beyond what I can provide or produce. He makes pretty much videos on the daily, sometimes multiple videos on the daily about everything and anything. There's no stone unturned with that guy. He's covering every single question that people are raising directly to him or indirectly in other groups. He's even answering questions that people aren't raising, kind of like taking that initiative and being proactive in terms of providing that next level of engagement with everyday players to guys who would consider themselves experts in this field. There's many different podcasts out there. There's many different social media pages. Back then, we had to create our own Excel sheets, get raw dumps from whoever we could find that had raw dumps of data for NRL, start forming our own break-evens of that. Now, these days, we've got NRLFantasyStats.com that does it all for us, from historical analysis to break-evens. These tools are absolutely insane to have, and the landscape has changed dramatically from where it was originally to 2022. It's almost like we've gone to that commercial age and industry age of having computers when people never used to have a computer at everyday home. It's kind of comparing apples to oranges here, but just trying to illustrate how much we've changed over the times and how many great resources are out there. But getting back on the actual topic, so Adrian has been a forefront community member, famously and infamously. The biggest group I remember from many, many moons ago was the NRL Renegades, which was a community-driven group. The rules were a little looser for that group. I remember one of the guys was... there was so many different people across there. There was that one Indian guy, skinny fellow, who always used to come up with the most ridiculous trade suggestions, but then those trades would absolutely be gold mines for people who follow them, even though they wouldn't make any sense from a statistical point of view. There was that one guy who goes by, I think he has initials as his name, so he used to threaten to fight people all the time in the group if they didn't agree with him. And then there was that one other guy who agreed to meet up with him at a Macca's in I think it was Penrith, and then he recorded on his Motorola calling the guy out. The other guy never showed up, and then he ended up, I don't know if he was banished from the group or removed, I don't know. Anyway, those days were kind of interesting in their own right. The landscape has probably changed a lot. People become a lot more politically correct. There's a lot less slagging, to a degree. But talking about Adrian Butters and the drama that's around him now, the thing about that guy is, I said this in my video 5 years ago, I genuinely don't think he is a bad person. And there are some people out there trying to portray him as some bad dude, right? And that's one of his major hassles is that he feels bullied, he feels under the spotlight unnecessarily, he feels targeted. But I think, and this is a bit of a constant reminder for me when I meet the very extremes of people in everyday life, is that Adrian Butters, the main criticism that seems to be consistent is that he comes across as condescending. There will be posts out there, people posting up their teams, getting ideas, and Adrian Butters would come in there and, give his opinion in a way that was very stern. In some ways, kind of took the mickey out of people, and in a high horse or I told you so kind of way. I'm not going to post up those exact responses here because I think anyone, if you were there 5 years ago, 6 years ago to now, you would have seen them. But I think the underlying problem is that he comes off really rough around the edges towards people. And I kind of compared him to like an old school CEO from like the 80s or 70s who wasn't really socially aware, would down talk his employees. He was more of a boss rather than a leader. And that rubs people the wrong way, right? I mean, let's face it. The majority of people who play fantasy are super cash, just want to enjoy it. Watching the NRL is kind of a leisure activity for them. It's more about being involved in whatever comp they're with their mates, with their workmates, whoever. And Adrian just sometimes dives in and gives his opinion about things and says, "Oh, you should have done that," or "This is what I should have done," or yeah, it's just the long, lengthy responses he provides just turns a lot of people off, and the way he says it, some of the terminology in there as well, it just doesn't help. And each and every person is their own person. For me, knowing his history from the many, many years ago and then having a blank slate now and seeing what's happened in only 5 weeks, I actually think the guy likes to play up the villain role in like a Shakespeare play, or better yet, like a bad guy in a video game. Like the Riddler in Batman, right? He's a genius. He's the smartest villain in the Batman universe. But he has to let everyone know that he's the genius. And that becomes Riddler's downfall because the other villains don't take him as seriously because he's a smug bloke who just rips it and rubs it. Now, people on the internet love to play up their character or love to play up who they are, or generally love to portray someone who they aren't in real life. It's the internet. It is what it is. You're gonna get that. And I actually think he loves the attention, good or bad, because there always seems to be some sort of news surrounding the guy. The guy runs his own groups. The guy has created his own app. The guy wants you to be part of that. When you make a post about what should I do, there will be a post from one of the pages he runs to say, this is what we think, da-da-da-da-da, and the 5 lines. And it's kind of like in religion, those people that you see on the street that rock up to you and want to hand you the good book or want to give you the Book of Mormon or whatever they're selling, and you're just not interested and you're kind of looking for this one-line response, but here's this full page of like, in your face, and it's kind of very strong and very stern. And I just think that if he turned it down a little bit, that people would naturally gravitate to him more rather than trying to pull people in. Whenever you force anything, whether it be with people, relationships, a new girl you meet, Tinder, whatever, it just gets a little bit uncomfortable for the other person. when you're doing a good job and you might not get the credit for it, that's when you kind of look like a superstar. And when the other people from outside the stadium start to see you as that kind of like hero, or get that other opinion of you that you're doing some good work. You know, and that's the biggest thing. If you can garnish respect naturally by absolutely killing it in fantasy, giving people some simple tips, helping them out, people will naturally follow you. They'll want to be part of your group. Look at, I spoke about Jamie Brown, NRL Fantasy Analysis. Look at what that guy has birthed. He's got a following next to none. There may be other contenders out there that I'm just not fully aware about, but he's raking in the views. He's raking in reactions from his followers, asking him specifically, Jamie, what are we doing? And he's just offering content. He's not finding responses to people's questions. He's just putting the content out there, and people are finding him. And that just goes hand in hand. That if you can walk the walk, you talk the talk, he's killing it with his ranks, people are going to naturally do that. Back in the day, the most sought out people in the NRL fantasy land were the prior winners. I believe his name, I'm trying to remember, was it 2015 or 16? The Parramatta fan, Daniel Green. It's probably tripping up a little bit out there, but he used to get, back when there wasn't a lot of social media outlets, like YouTube, podcasts, whatever, people used to write their comment, what should I do? Here's what I'm thinking. And then at that one particular person, because everyone respects the guy who wins, right? Because he obviously won for a reason. You don't just fluke winning in NRL fantasy across an entire season. So, just going to reiterate, I don't think Butters is a bad dude. I think he's come off very strong, and he's done that for as long as I've known. I think he plays it up a little bit. If he kind of, reeled it back in, he wouldn't be targeted, right? I'm not an advocate for bullying, absolutely not. But when you're putting yourself in the center stage and you're replying to people's comments every whatever post, trying to garnish those followers, you just, and the way you do it as well, you're going to get that backlash in the eye of any community. And I'm not surprised that we're here, but I think I think this is completely fixable. He's just got to turn it down. And he may watch this video, he may not. That's the only thing I'd say, is just dial it down, dude. Even by me saying that, he may not even, the first thing, I said that to him in a post. There was that post that came up, and I said, hey, dude, this was 5 years ago, and it's the present, and you seem to be at the top of the headlines. And he said something along the lines of, oh, you're just a parrot like everyone else. And I'm like, mate, I made my comment, 5 years ago, and we're here. I know nothing in between. I don't know the individual people from individual groups. I don't know anything about that. But I do know him just from the interactions in the different communities. So, that my advice doesn't change. Tone it down. Do the good work you do. People like your style. They'll like it. You're going to get haters no matter what you do. Even the best coaches out there, even if you make the right decisions, people are going to say, no, that's wrong. And when you make the wrong decision, don't worry. If you're making a social media channel and you're putting that out there, people will tell you the next week, hey, you brought in Cleary, he only got 52. What? That was wrong. He's lost 100 grand. You're bad. You can't. You're never gonna get everything right. We're dealing with men in the NRL. We're not dealing with certain events that are gonna happen indefinitely. This is like playing roulette sometimes. We've got our guns, we've got our cash cows, we've got our middies, we've got people who we think are going to do well, we've got people who think are going to do bad based on whatever information's available. It's just going to happen that way. But that's kind of like my 2 cents on the whole drama. Yeah, I think he's just got to tone it down a bit, and good things will happen if you just naturally do your good work in the background. Just do it. Don't bite into the apple. Someone bites at you, just don't bite back. Every time you give them fuel, you're gonna get more into a deeper hole. Especially if you're reacting completely emotionally and you're like not only just responding, but your responses are coming off very edgy, very angry as well. So just chill it down. Everything's going to be alright. In a week's time, people will be like, oh no, the drama, it's still on. And in 3 weeks' time, people will start to forget it. In a month's time, no one will even care. And by the end of the season, everyone will have forgotten. And then we start off with the new year and everything's fresh. So, yeah, I wouldn't, maybe potentially you want to keep playing up the kind of villain role. That's cool too. More power to you. And if it is a troll, wow, I think you've gotten a lot of people involved, but I don't think anyone trolls for 5 years. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Let's talk about the NRL Fantasy Round. Look, I'm gonna be honest, guys. On the back of all that, the team's not doing all that great. We've made some good calls. We've got Starling in. Unfortunately, Haas is out. I'm going to put him on the bench and do the loophole. I'll have Ilias there, but I may bring in Brodie Jones, depending upon what Ilias gets, because the Rabbitohs play the day before. I'm not making any trades. Unfortunately, with Hammer getting injured the prior week, I had to bring in Coates. I didn't want to bring in Coates, but there wasn't really a fullback that I could have maintained for that round. Koula could have filled that position, and I could have had Hammer to anyone else. Unfortunately, Koula also got ruled out. So things aren't just panning out for me this year. But that's okay. We're gonna play smart. We're not just gonna make unnecessary trades left, right, and center just for the sake of it. So I'm gonna stick with the squad. I'm not making any trades. I'm thinking of captaining Fifita this week. I would have captained Haas, but he's out. So I'm thinking captaining Fifita, vice captaining Curran. Not that that'll matter because Fifita should naturally play. Unfortunately, with my middies, I've got to play Leo Thompson and I've got to play Max King indefinitely because of the injury that I had with Haas. Is what it is. Not much you can do. But I think I'm going to wind that video down. We've hit the 23-minute mark. I'm hoping everyone has a good week in fantasy and or Supercoach, which we're actually killing it on. If you didn't know, we also do Supercoach videos. I'm in the top 1,000. All right, I was 930 last week. I'm 1,037th this week. We're there. We're competitive. We just need to get that little extra hurdle into next week and hopefully jump in the top 800. I'm gonna say 725th next week. But yeah, we're not doing so well in fantasy. That's all good. We're going to bounce back in the second part of this season. Hope you're all doing well. Have a good Easter. I hope you all enjoy your holiday, your break. Remember, it's a long weekend. Double demerits. And take it easy, guys. Whoosh.